another episode of the Learn Recruiter podcast. I'm your host, Brett Clemenson, and if you're a recruiter, out on your own, or just lacking general advice or mentorship, you've come to the right place. Our episodes are designed to give you the motivation, the strategies, and the support you need to become the very best Learn Recruiter. So join us, grab a cup of coffee, and let's take your desk to another level. Now, it's ironic that I hold this cup of coffee up today. This episode, what recruiters or salespeople can learn from the perfect cup of coffee. Now, bear with me. If you don't drink coffee, this will still apply. But I'm not sure how much you know about what goes into the perfect cup of coffee. I have not been a barista, but I love my coffee. Down to the machine I've got at home. I've got a nice commercial grade machine, handmade Italian piece. I've got this amazing grinder that just really extracts the best bits out of it. But if you go end to end with a cup of coffee, right? Like we walk down, we go to work and we pick up a coffee and we don't think much more of it. We go, I need my cafe, let's get into it. But for a lot of people, particularly in Australia, the culture around coffee is the expectation is this thing better be bloody good, right? But what actually goes into a cup of coffee to make it bloody good? I'm going to tell you, because it starts with the beans. If you pick the beans at the wrong season, or you're growing them in the wrong climate, or you don't have the right soil, or whatever, or nutrients, those beans aren't going to be great, and that's going to ruin your cup of coffee. But every step of the way for a cup of coffee, for it to be a good cup of coffee, needs to actually be excellent, like proper excellence. So like the beans, we've got to pick them at the right time. Then we've got to roast them, right? So now we've got to go and roast them, and we all know that every roasted bean smells different. When you smell those packets, you go, oh, wow, that smells good. That smells chocolatey, or oh, that smells this. Like every roast is different. How you roast it is different. You can roast them in barrels. You can roast them in small batch, large batch, single origin, blends. And that component there can really dictate the flavor of your coffee. But then the next step along the line is grind. I don't think people really give enough value to how important the grind actually is, and you've got to get that right balance so that the water flows through at the optimal speed so that it extracts the best parts of the coffee and flavor out of those beans. If the grind's too thick, the water just goes straight through. If the grind's too thin, it will just soak it all up and overheat the coffee and taste burnt and like cigarettes. So the grind is actually super, super important too. So let's assume we got that part right. Now we've got to get the right amount of coffee into the cup, right? So I think 27 grams is the rough thing. Don't quote me on that. There is a grams that's meant to be perfect. I do mine by sight and feel, but if you want to be perfect, like the guys down the road here who do a beautiful Coffee Brothers, they weigh every grind. Then they have this little machine that evenly distributes the coffee so that when they tamp it down and they push those coffee beans in, it's an even distribution so that the water can flow through perfectly, right? So again, you stuff any of these parts up, the flavor of our coffee is going to be affected. Now we've got to put this thing in and extract the coffee, right? So if you've got water that's too hot, you're going to burn it. If you've got water that's too cold, it's not going to extract it quick enough for the time that you're purging. And you're not going to get the right flavor or balance of coffee coming through. Now assume we've done all of those steps right. We've got to enter the milk. What is the quality of milk? Is it fresh? Is it milk? Is it soy milk? What sort of soy milk is it? Does it curdle? Is it splitting? Like, are the beans too acidic for the soy milk that you're using? Like, you need to now get the milk blend right so that it sits perfectly in that cup of coffee. When it hits your lips, it's creamy, silky. It's perfectly blended and balanced nicely. Not too many bubbles. Nice frothy milk. We don't overheat the milk so it tastes again burnt. There's a lot of skill that goes into the milk component for it. And even if we get all of those components right, okay, and it comes to the pour, if you just slam that milk in like you see a lot of baristas do, you're just disrupting all of the balance of the crema on top of your coffee shot. You're not mixing it properly. It needs to be a nice, gentle sort of pour. The reason a pitcher, in my opinion, is so important on top of your coffee is that that's telling me that you've done the milk right. If you can get a nice flour in the top of your coffee, or a pitcher if you've got a nice artist barista, that tells me that that the milk's done right, the coffee's done right, and it's all kind of humming together. It's when you see like you open your cup up and there's popped bubbles, and it looks a bit chatty on top. Something's gone wrong with that coffee. Either the beans are too acidic, either you didn't get enough crema, you got too much, maybe you overheated the milk, maybe you've over-frothed the milk. But when you look at that cup of coffee and it looks good, generally it is good because all of those components, all of those steps of the way have come to produce the perfect cup of coffee. Now, why the hell am I talking about coffee today? This episode, as I've said, is what can we learn from the perfect cup of coffee? You're probably gonna working out where I'm going with this. I do not believe that recruitment or sales is any different to a perfect cup of coffee. Because if we know that the start of our process is generating a role or generating a candidate or starting the process of a placement, and the end of it is actually ringing that bell and going, I've closed the deal, they've signed, they've started. End to end, there are so many components that go towards getting that important bit of information that you need that's going to make a massive difference when the offer comes out or when it's time to close. We've all been there. You get my drift. Every part of recruitment is liking a perfect cup of coffee. Brief, creative content for advertising, for scripts, interviewing. If you can't get the interviewing right, what's next? Then you've got to prep for interviews. You've got to get these people on first, second interview. And if you're not prepping your candidates correctly, if you're not prepping your clients correctly, if you're not doing the process properly, you've just got one candidate, one role, and you're just crossing your fingers and crossing your toes and hoping that works. No, you want to do the right thing there. You want to make sure you've got multiple candidates for the role. You want to make sure you've got multiple options for your candidates. But if you don't do that part, chances are you're going to end up with nothing. So as we move through our pipeline towards the perfect cup of coffee, i.e. making a placement, we need to think of every step as pieces to a whole. And if we don't get this bit right, we're less of a chance to make a deal or a great cup of coffee at the end of the process. And think of it as diminishing returns. Every time you cut a corner, every time you think, it'll be right, or hit and hope, whatever, you're just creating a shitty cup of coffee. Remember that. Okay? Every time you want to go and cut a corner, every time you want to not do a step, I didn't prep a candidate, I didn't pre-close, I just gave them the offer, I didn't reference properly, or I didn't use the reference to sell back in. Whatever it is in your pipeline, all the important steps that you deem is the end-to-end for a deal, clearly you think they're all important. Make sure you freaking nail every single step. Because if you don't nail every single step, and I'm going to say this to ad nauseum because I'm going to hear you say this around the office, is that if you skip a corner, you are just making yourself a shitty cup of coffee. That's all I have time for you today. I hope you got something out of it. Please like, share, subscribe. And if you do have friends who are in recruitment, please share this to them. But if you've got friends in sales, share this to them as well. Our goal here is to motivate you, to inspire you, to push you along on days where you're feeling a bit down, and hopefully give you a little bit of technical insights as we go. So please share the love, give it to your friends. We appreciate it. That's all I have time for you today. As always, have an amazing day, and may all your deals and amazing cups of coffee come true.